Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Hello. I cannot believe, but this is my last set of podcast episodes being recorded in our current house. That's right. We are going to be moving house very, very shortly. I'm very excited. If you follow me on any kind of social media, don't get too excited because we will be moving to a house that also has magnolia walls next. So, that won't change, but we are moving up to the north of England. I'm super excited about that. So if you are somebody who is based in the north of England, Yorkshire, Leeds, Manchester, other places that are in the north of England, reach out on LinkedIn and do let me know, because I'm making it my mission to get to know as many places in the north of England as possible, because I've never lived there. I've actually never lived north of the Thames. So I'm very excited and also a little bit nervous that I'm not going to fit in. But in today's episode, I'm really excited. I'm going to catch you up on all of the things that happened when I was in Los Angeles a few weeks ago and give you some of the sales lessons and, most importantly, insights from the rest of the market to help you smash your sales goals in the second half of this year. I have been back from LA for about a week and a half as I'm recording this. I've had tons of messages from you all, which I love. So thank you to anybody who has emailed or dropped me a message on LinkedIn to say, what was LA like? It looks so cool, because LA is cool, it turns out. Now, I am going to say something on this episode that I don't think is going to be super popular, but please bear with me. My thought before I went to LA, I went out there I was delivering a couple of corporate workshops out there for corporate clients, and I was attending a retreat out there, which was epic. But I'd never been to LA before. And as somebody who has never been to LA, but has been to other areas, I kind of thought that LA wasn't going to be worth the hype as a place. So if you are listening and you're one of our American podcast listeners, please don't switch off now, because I would like to publicly take this opportunity to say I was wrong. LA was phenomenal. I did think it was going to be a place that didn't really resonate for me because I'm incredibly pale. So 300 plus days of sunshine per year, a little bit difficult for somebody who's got my skin tone. And I did get burnt. Even though I was wearing Factor 50 the whole time, I came back, my forehead was peeling. That was attractive. Also because I kind of had bought into the hype around LA, City of Stars, I kind of thought it would be surface level. And I was incredibly wrong about that. It's actually now one of my favorite places that I have ever traveled to. And that is a huge deal for me because of the attitude out there around work, opportunities, sales in general. And that's really what I want to share with you today. So if you get nothing else from this episode, just know that I was incredibly wrong about Los Angeles. It is actually a fantastic place to visit. I am now telling everybody that they should go just to experience the sunshine, the arcade games, whale watching, and of course, the epic work ethic out there. I do want to share 3 really, really important things with you today around what I picked up. And sometimes I think it's interesting because you go to these events and you think, I really want to learn about one particular strategy or something you've signed up for. And actually what you get can be quite different. And I would say that what I got from my time out in LA was quite different to what I was expecting. Let's grab a cup of tea together, or, maybe grab the dog lead and head out on a little wander. And I'm going to download my biggest, best thoughts about my time in Los Angeles and the sales lessons that I got from them. As I'd mentioned, I think previously, I went out to Los Angeles for ostensibly a retreat. I haven't been in coaching circles for a very long time. So I hadn't hired a coach or mentor since 2019. And in 2019, I'd made a huge singular investment into coaching. I actually paid $60,000 for coaching in 2019 to one particular mentor. Now, the reason I'm telling you that is not so that you think, oh my goodness, I have to go out and pay $60,000. I was at a time in my business in 2019, as some of you might know from being in my community since then or listening to the podcast episodes where I've talked about some of that journey. I was making a big decision about my business. I was deciding that I wanted to get rid of funnels in my business. I only wanted to teach B2B sales because that's what I enjoyed most. It was what I was seeing the most success with for my clients. It was just the area that I was just feeling satisfied by. You know, I'd been really openly burnt out and frustrated by the B2C funnel market from 2014 to 2018. I was frustrated about the lack of predictability. I was frustrated about having to use lots of paid traffic and pay organizations that I didn't feel had the same values as I did, money for advertising. And I much preferred working with my corporate clients and just found that the individuals I was working with across the health and wellness space and communication spaces, project managers, program managers, comms professionals, sales and marketing professionals were just doing much better when I was teaching them to sell B2B than when we were looking at the B2C space. Because ultimately the B2C space had become this kind of cesspit, which is quite a strong word, isn't it? But it had become this kind of cesspit where funnels and not actually delivering what was promised to clients had become the norm. And it seemed to be very much about who can have the biggest personality on social media versus who was actually delivering the best services to clients, getting the best results. And I just didn't want to participate anymore. I was very burnt out with it. So I spent $60,000 hiring a coach to just help me, I think, be brave enough, if I'm honest, to say, actually, I'm not going to do anything with this side of my business anymore. I just am going to focus on B2B and B2B sales for entrepreneurs. It was a really interesting time, and I'd not been in coaching since then. Last year, it was about September time. I thought, so September 2023, I thought, well, do you know what? I haven't been in coaching for a while. Maybe I should have a look at that. I wanted to do certain things with the business. And for me, it wasn't really about being coached actually per se. It was, I wanted to meet new people. There are certain times in your business where you just think, oh, actually, I just want to expand my network of like decent people that are working on similar goals or that have similar values to me. And I found that quite difficult over the last 10 years in business, if I'm honest. I think it can be very challenging to find people who are unapologetically ambitious and driven. I think it has been difficult to find people who are genuinely good at what they do and not just good at marketing what they do. And I think it's been difficult to, particularly since the pandemic, just to see people in person. For me, last year in September, I sat there thinking, I want to do some different bits and bobs with the business and I want to meet a really good network. So I started looking around at masterminds and things that I could be involved with. Ultimately, I picked one that gave me the ability to attend some in-person retreats, hence being invited to go out to Los Angeles. I will say that the mastermind that I've joined, very, very excellent from a networking perspective, from a putting me in a room with people who are intelligent, ambitious, driven, high level, multi-6, 7-figure business owners. I will also say I'm very different from them because a lot of them are still in that funnels and B2C space, but really, really useful for me to be around other people who just want to push their business forward in the same way and the same time frame that I did. So I was invited out to Los Angeles to attend a retreat. And as you guys know, I'm somebody who I don't go to things unless I am going to cultivate good opportunities. And for me, because I knew that the people at the event were into funnels and B2C marketing, I was like, well, I'm probably not going to get like clients or anything from that, or networking for referrals and things like that. But I want to go. I want to be around these people and build a new network. So I decided to sell some corporate opportunities that would fund my time out there. I don't know whether anyone else thinks in this way. If you don't think in this way, it's totally fine. But I do. I'm just like, I want it to be cost neutral. Does that phrase apply to anybody else? So what I decided to do was go to some corporate leads that I had been targeting with organizations that I knew were interested in what I did, but weren't so interested in virtual stuff. And I said, hey, look, I'm going to be out in Los Angeles. Here are the sorts of things that I think I could bring to the table and the dates that I'm available. Let me know if you're interested. And I actually had two companies who were like super, super interested. Let's get you in and doing things, which was cool and did mean that attending the retreat was a cost neutral expense for me and something that was a really, really cool opportunity. I got to the companies who brought me in actually paid for my travel and accommodation, which meant that it was, great. Like wonderful opportunity for me. And it's one of the reasons that when I attended the retreat, I was telling people about this. I was like, oh yeah, I was really excited to come, but I've got this weird thing about investing in the right things and being cost neutral about opportunities and making sure that I maximize opportunities. And I was like, and actually two companies have paid me to be out here essentially for this trip. And people were super, super interested in that. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. It was really interesting for me because I just assumed everybody operated in that way. And I'd forgotten, because I haven't been in the online space and like networking that space for such a long time, that actually it's very different, or it can be very different, in that people can often attend events and things at really high expenses to be seen going to events rather than going to deliberately cultivate opportunities, networks, referrals, those kinds of cost neutral or revenue generating activities. And so that was a cool reminder for me. And I'm hoping that I'm passing that on to you in the right way. Like if you're going to go to an event, any event, make sure that it is going to be something that is going to generate a return on investment for you, not just in terms of what you're learning, and sometimes not even in terms of what you're learning, but in terms of who are you spending time with? How is that helping you move forward? Are you creating any networks, referrals, or introductions that are going to be useful to your future business? I know that when a lot of people attend our Converting Corporates events, we've had people who've attended those events before who've cultivated relationships with people who've asked them to deliver associate coaching or consulting programs of work for them. We've had people who've attended Converting Corporates and met people that have then become amazing accountability buddies and circles for them. We've even had people who've attended Converting Corporates who have met people there that have said, oh my goodness, like my clients really need what you're offering. Like, can we introduce you? And so they've actually made sales from the relationships and things that they've built at that event. And I think that's one of the interesting, probably side notes of this episode, that for me, what's interesting in being the person who delivers Converting Corporates, where you will come along, build a network, leverage that to sell to corporate clients so it's not competitive, versus attending events where most people are trying to sell to each other or to each other's audiences, is a very different, I'm going to use the word energy, but it is a very different energy, because it's not like a kind of competitive, we all have to be the best in the room so that we get the most clients from the room, or that we get the most use out of audience building opportunities. Instead, it's very much, we meet the people in the room, we learn the strategies, but the people in the room are great because we could invite them to help us deliver programs in future, or make referrals, or make networks to organizations, and we're not acting as competitors. That was just an interesting little side note that I thought was kind of cool. Anyway, that's why I went to LA, and it was, really, really great opportunity, really good for me to get some sunshine. I don't know about anybody else, but I found winter particularly challenging this year. Thank you, climate change, for being so dark and miserable and rainy. And I wasn't really expecting a lot from Los Angeles. Owen had decided to fly out to meet me about 4 days in, because he's going to be working away a lot over the summer. So we were like, we're going to get a little trip in and maybe we'll do some touristy things, but we really weren't expecting a whole lot. And actually, there were 3 very, very key things that came out of the trip for LA that really revitalized me and made me think very differently about sales in general, and certainly the way that I discuss sales with you guys. And also just really brightened up my year. Like 2024 has been the year of grey clouds and rain, and I needed that sun. The first thing that I got from Los Angeles, even stepping off the plane, was this overwhelming sense that in LA, everyone cultivates and, most importantly, takes opportunities. Los Angeles is an opportunity-driven city. And what I mean by that is, in the UK, I think that there is this tendency to feel like you really want to do something, and to feel like in order to take an opportunity, in order to go and sell to corporate companies, for example, that you need to be uber qualified, have tons of certifications, have a social media following of like 50,000 people before you can take the opportunity. We always feel in the UK that we're not quite qualified enough. And there's also this overwhelming kind of sense in the UK that it's desperate to cultivate opportunities, right? What I mean by that is that people will often say to me, but Jess, if I keep selling this thing, or if I keep approaching corporate clients about this program that I'm running, or these coaching spots that I have, won't they think that I'm desperate, or won't they see it as being desperate, or won't they see me as being not successful because I keep selling something? And I've always said no, because I've always believed like you sell it until you've sold out. But going to LA was like going to a city that physically represented that, which is a really odd thing to say. But in Los Angeles, it is super normal for people to very transparently ask for opportunities. I had people in Los Angeles come up to me and go, oh, wow, you sell to companies. I do this. How would I sell that to a company? Do you think it would be worth it? How long would it take? That never happens to me in the UK. People will often come up to me and say, oh, wow, like you teach selling to corporates. That's cool. I'm in the consulting space. And sometimes I sell to corporates and I'm like, oh, cool. And I might ask, oh, whereabouts are you in your B2B sales journey? And they'll like freak out because they're like, oh, I don't want you to sell anything to me or whatever. When really that's not my intention. My intention is always just have a conversation and offer some tips or resources that I might have already created. In the UK, we do shy away from those opportunity creating conversations. And that means that sometimes and this might not be true for people who are listening from, we're very fortunate, we've got a global listenership, but if you're listening from France or Canada, or we get a lot of people listening from Asia, this might not be true for you, but I think you can probably take the lessons anyway. It doesn't seem to be that we openly have opportunity cultivating conversations because we worry about other people's perceptions of us, but in Los Angeles, I would get people who come up to me and say, hey, I've heard that you work with corporate companies. Do you work with this company? If you do, can you introduce me? And there'd be people I've never met before, like literally never met. It's okay to take the opportunity. I would also say that is tempered with LA being a city that people will often have like two jobs, because most people go to Los Angeles to land their big break in music or in film. And so a lot of them are also working as tour guides or Uber drivers, waitresses or waiters or servers, as you say in the US. A lot of people are working in spaces where they feel like they might meet people who are able to cultivate those opportunities, or whether they're going to be able to have more of those opportunity cultivating conversations, which I think is very, very cool. And it was something that really revitalized me, because I was like, I can think of tons of things that I've done in the last year, tons of events that I've been to, tons of podcasts that I've been on, tons of conversations I've had with people where I've just held back a little bit about asking what they can do for me in case it makes them feel uncomfortable, right? And that's me saying that. And I love selling, and I'm somebody who's super direct. But there have been these occasions where I've been like, I would love for that person to introduce me to X person, or I would love to go on that person's podcast, but I don't want to overstep the mark and ask. And so LA for me, in terms of taking opportunities, was this huge lesson in, and not just lesson, but reminder of, do you know what? If you want something, go and take the opportunity to make it happen. So go and invest the time, the energy, the relationship building, the money, whatever it is that you need to do. Go and invest that in it so that you can take the opportunities and cultivate the opportunities that you want to come up. The second thing that I learned or was reminded of was how transparent you can be and you get to be about your sales process. And I'm going to combine that with how passionate people can be about their sales processes, which isn't something that we automatically think of when we think about B2B sales. We were actually driving to Long Beach one day, and oh no, it wasn't Long Beach. Sorry, it was Santa Monica. That was a lie. We were driving to Santa Monica beach one day, and it was about 45 minutes from the place that we were staying. Now, 45 minutes is not a huge drive in the UK or Central Europe, but in LA, it kind of is, because traffic in LA is just constant. So what should be a 45-minute drive will often take like 90 minutes or more. And we got in the car, it was about 10 a.m. It's also worth noting we couldn't figure out how to change the radio station properly in our hire car. So we get into the hire car, we switch it on, and there was a radio station. It was a Christian radio station. And they were talking about how they wanted donations from the public to keep the station on air. Now, I said to Owen, I'm not somebody who's particularly interested in religious music, but I love listening to sales pitches. So I was like, please, can we just listen to this for a bit? I just want to see, what they do and how they're going to sell it and, whatever. Anyway, we drove to Santa Monica. We had it on the whole way there. We got in the car, we went to other places, and we ended up getting back to our accommodation about 5 p.m. that day. And in total, we'd probably listened to that particular radio station for about, 2.5, 3 hours as we were driving to different places and picking up different things. At not any point did we hear any kind of music. We didn't hear any value, so there were no I don't know what I was expecting from a religious radio station, so I will apologize because I don't know a lot about them, but I was kind of expecting sermons and music and philosophical conversations. There was none of that. Now, I'm not naming the station because I imagine on other at other times they probably do all of those things. So I don't want to be a bad sales driver for them. But they were on a donation day. They were actually on their last day of asking for donations after a week of doing this. So they had been running their sales process for an entire week. And their sales process went something like this. You switched on the radio and you were immediately landed into reasons that they were asking for donations. And their reasons that they were asking for donations were, we want to keep the station on air. We rely on donations to keep it going. We want to bring the radio station to more people. We believe that what we do is really useful and valuable and that people get a lot out of it. All sales messages that you would see for pretty much anything. But the difference was they just did it constantly. So out of an 8-hour window of us traveling around the city and 2 to 3 hours of being in the car, all we heard was them selling. And they would do things like, in the next minute, I'm not going to put on an American accent, by the way. I think that would be deeply offensive because my American accent imitation is incredibly poor. But they would do things like, in the next minute, we just want 500 people to donate $30 each in 1 minute. Do you think we can do it? And then other people at the radio station would be in the background yeah, we can do it, super hyped. And it reminded me of, that Wolf of Wall Street film, which is one of my favorites, by the way, where they're all on the trading floor and they're just shouting. They're on the phone to their clients and it's high energy, go, go, rah, rah. And reminded me also of pretty much every sales floor I've ever worked on. High energy, high activity, volume, noise, this cacophony of energy of sales, bring it in, close the deals, let's do the thing. But in a radio station, and they were asking for donations. And for me, that was really interesting because I've worked in the online space for 10 years. And I will say that one of the first things that happened when I came into the online space was that people would tell you, it's not okay to be salesy. And I think that what people mean when they talk about being salesy is it's not okay to say, would you like to pay me for this thing? It's not okay to follow up and say, hey, this would really benefit you. Do you want to buy it? Or reach out to anybody and say, hey, look, I've noticed that you've got this kind of issue going on at the moment. Are you exploring solutions? Because apparently doing that is salesy and desperate and weird. And I think that there are some spammy techniques out there. Certainly the people who used to be just DM your ideal clients on Facebook and say, oh, you've got a dog. Oh, I've got a dog. Oh, let's be friends. Let's hop on a connection call. And then let me try and sell you everything that I've ever created. But it reminded me of this idea in the B2B space of being shameless, right? It's okay to sell transparently. It's okay to ask people if they want to buy something. It's okay to give your corporate clients a deadline on when a proposal will expire and when their pricing might change. It is okay to consultatively advise your corporate clients and prospects of the consequences of not changing something in their organization or not fixing a problem that you or they have already recognized. But the online space really teaches us the opposite. It's like, no, you should be ashamed to sell because selling is desperate. Selling makes you look like you don't have any clients. Selling makes you look sleazy. And these things aren't true, but it's very, very easy to fall into that trap. And it's one of the things that I love about B2B sales is that when you're selling to companies, you are having transparent conversations. You are reaching out to cold leads transparently. You are empowering them when you're following up to outreach or following up to proposals or following up to sales messaging in general. You're empowering them to make the decision to say, actually, yeah, we do need that. Thank you so much for following up. I really appreciate it. Or for them to make the decision to say, actually, do you know what? Now isn't the right time for us. Can we circle back to this in 6 months? And for me, that idea of being shameless around selling is actually more about being transparent around selling, being consultative and advising people when they're doing something right and when they might need to make changes because of consequences, and empowering them to make the right decision for them, for their organization, rather than, feeling like you have to hard sell them into a generic solution because you just need to make a couple of deals that month, right? LA was a lot, and I saw a lot, including this radio station, of people who genuinely, passionately believed that what they were selling was the most useful, the most valuable thing that they possibly could sell. And so they were absolutely transparent, shameless, and relentless in doing it. This radio station, 8 hours just that we had kind of been tracking for donations. And they would say things like, Paul from Minneapolis has just donated $10,000, right? They do these minutes where they were asking for 15 people to donate $30 each and get a free t-shirt. And then suddenly they'd be like, well, don't worry about it. Paul's just donated $10,000. Who else wants to match Paul? And then they'd have, other people donating instead of $30, $500, $1,000, $10,000. And I sat there just thinking, blimey, like, here's a radio station that is just relentless and transparent in, if people want to make the decision to donate, they can. And if they don't, they can switch off, right? They weren't bothered. They weren't focused on what if people are tired of hearing after 4 hours that this is the last day of donations and they don't want to donate. What if they switch off? What if they send us a rude email? They weren't worried about that. They were just like, no, let's focus on the people who might donate $10,000. And I thought that was quite liberating. It certainly was liberating for me. It reminded me of the days that I used to work on sales floors. And I say to everybody, one of the things that made me a really successful salesperson was I wasn't bothered about people saying no. I really wanted more no's, because the more no's I got, the more yeses I got. It meant I was doing enough volume of activity. I see so often people paralyzed by fear. They're like, I don't know whether I should write this word or this word, and think that that's going to make the biggest difference in their B2B sales process. And the reality is it won't. You've got to have a good volume of activity, good messaging, and qualified leads to send it to. That's what's going to make the difference. Yeah. Having that solid 5-step sales process that we teach here at Selling to Corporate. And then the third thing I learned, and this is interesting for me because it wasn't something I expected. Like I was saying at the beginning of this episode, I went to the retreat because I wanted to build a network of people who were ambitious and driven. I wanted to see and be around people who liked similar things to me, traveling and new opportunities and being in person at intimate mastermind events and exchanging ideas and things. I didn't expect to get any clients at all because that wasn't why I went. And most people there are quite open about the fact that, they sell in that B2C market, and that was what was most important to them. But what was really interesting was that I was at this retreat, and then I was at subsequent other events with big name entrepreneurs, and people kept coming up to me, and people have kept coming up to me after the retreat and the events and saying, I know that I need to sell to corporates. Like, I've got a huge following on XYZ social platform, but I want to be able to create a corporate revenue stream because actually I want to do more speaking, or actually I want to get paid more for the coaching that I'm doing or the consulting, or actually I want to expand my business into the corporate space because I'm tired of having to be online all the time. And actually I'd like something that my team could just implement for me and that I wouldn't even have to think about apart from the delivery. And that was really interesting to hear big names saying and actively approaching me to say, I want to sell my services to corporate, and how can I do that? Whether it was in a service delivery capacity, so delivering coaching or consulting, whether it was adding in a speaking component to their business, whether they wanted to work with corporates to cultivate sponsorship opportunities and brand association opportunities. It was interesting because it highlights and reiterates to me, and hopefully to you, that the big names know that corporate revenue is predictable, it's scalable, it's going to pay more, it's actually simpler to target, to implement, to execute, and to deliver. And that this world that has been built in the online space is not the same as it was 10 years ago. It's not as easy. Everyone's got social media now. Everyone can be a social media personality, which means you have to go bigger and better and whatever all of the time. And it's not the same with corporate companies. With corporate companies, it is, can you show that you are capable of delivering the transformation that you promise you can? Do you go in and do a great job and have a clear upsell process? Do you have a clear B2B sales process where you're able to target new corporate clients consistently, book sales calls consistently, navigate those sales calls competently, and be selling premium price solutions that you actually deliver really, really well to those organizations? That is just a whole sales process where it feels like you take a bit of a deep breath, instead of going out onto Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever other social media platforms exist now, TikTok, creating tons and tons of content, having to split test that content, then having to run paid traffic to that content, then having to set up funnels with tons of pages. I sold through funnels in 2015, 2016, 2017, and it's a lot of work. People don't tell you that. They're like, oh, just go and do a webinar. Well, great. But the average webinar, you're going to have to promote every day, multiple times for at least 2 weeks to make sure that people show up. And the average person will see 1 to 2% of their audience buying if they're good at sales. 1 to 2%. So if you've got an audience size and you're selling B2C of like 1,500 people, that actually doesn't give you a huge amount of sales or revenue. Whereas we know in the B2C space that people close 25% of sales. We also know that the average B2B sale is worth way more than the average B2C, 5 times more. And you don't have to be on social media. You don't even have to have a podcast like this one. You don't have to have a YouTube channel. You don't have to have any of those things. Unless you particularly want to work in brand ambassadorship or sponsorship, you don't have to have those things at all. And so for me, it was really interesting because these people that I was spending time with were absolute experts in their industry. They weren't saying, oh, I want to give up B2C sales at all. Like most of my clients, they were saying, I already have a really successful B2C revenue stream, or I have a B2C revenue stream that I like, but I want to supplement it with a corporate revenue stream, or I want to take work into corporates because I feel like I'm tired of having to show up in the way that I do for the work that I do and not getting paid when I'm not on social media. Yeah. Those are my key lessons from Los Angeles. And obviously the key lesson being that LA, great place to spend time. And I kind of want to be that person that winters there. Like in films from the 90s where you'd get like couples who were in their sort of like 50s and 60s and they'd spend time in a colder country over the summer months, and then they'd be like, oh, I winter in. I feel like when I'm in my 50s and 60s, LA will be the country that I winter in. So that's been a huge realization for me and an opportunity that I definitely will be taking up when I am ready in my life. Hopefully this episode has been interesting for you. It's a little bit different from the normal episodes that we put out, but hopefully it shared some of the insights and trends that we are seeing, and obviously reminds you that the more people who are going into the B2B market, the tighter your B2B sales process needs to be. So as ever, if you do need support selling to corporate clients, make sure that you use your summer wisely and grab a space inside the C-suite, which is open and will include one of our awesome in-person days on the 16th of September. So if you do join before September, you will get access to one of our in-person days on September the 16th, which is a Monday. Breakfast and lunch, as always, included, where we will be going through tips, techniques, and tactics, lots of T's, to leverage your Q4 revenue. And that's only for people who are inside the C-suite. It is based in London, but there are no public tickets on sale. So if you're already inside the C-suite self-study, or you are going to purchase a space before September, you will get an invite to network with an awesome community of people who are just like you, building corporate revenue streams, ambitious, driven, unapologetically funny, and more importantly, who can probably make some really great referral, affiliate, or associate networks for you in the future. I'll see you in the next episode.